Thank you, and hello, and good afternoon. I'm Seok John, the principal designer in mobile division, and I've been leading the Bixby UX design part from the beginning, and now I'm focused on the imagining the future of Bixby on multiple devices. Then I will be doing this presentation with my colleague, Gaurav.
Hi, my name is Gaurav Bhushan, and I'm the head of design at Viv Labs. I partner with John closely and his team, and my team is responsible for the conversation model and the design system behind Bixby. So before we get started, we'd just love to know who's in the crowd with us today. So if you guys are engineers or engineering managers, if you could raise your hand, please.
Cool.
Got it. Thank you. Or.
So then, how many of you are product manager or product owners? Okay, thank you. Then, how many of you are from academia?
Well,
Oh, here we go.
welcome.
Welcome. And last, how many of you are designer? Ooh.
A couple of people raised their hands twice.
Yeah. I can see some people raise their hands twice, and they probably start up. And I have to admit that I'm a little bit surprised to see so many people in this room. So I want to welcome you, and thank you so much to joining our Bixby UX session. And this is our agenda for this session today. We have divided our talk into the three parts. At the end of our session, you all will live with understanding of what conversation with Bixby and how to think about designing your Bixby capsules and how to actually compose your design with the tool and systems available on the Bixby platform. And now, when we say conversations, we are really imagining the Bixby as a voice assistant, being the primary way to interact and get things done seamlessly on any Samsung device in the future. So let's look at this from the user point of view and see how different interaction paradigms have come and go in order to understand the future we want to create. In an early stage, we had a button on our mobile phones. It seems very natural back then, given that we are used to using keyboard on PCs. But as a user, it will take several steps to do what you needed by indirectly manipulating the screen with 4 navigation keys. Then with the advance of smartphones came multi-touch interface. It creates a whole new experience for the user, including me, and especially the gesture interactions. It opens up new possibility on so many levels. But as the mobile platform has been growing more complex with all this depth and layers, it has become harder to do the things that you would like to do. As a designer, this has led us to think about how to let users get things done and faster. At the same time, spend less time navigating and manipulating UI. So voice is great interaction paradigm because it allows users to summon anything they need and complete what they intend to do simply and easily. And that vision has presented a huge opportunity for redesign what the screen itself is for, and considering what will be the most useful for when interacting with voice. So we really wanted to consider and explore what the Bixby as an assistant could feel like. And there were a few principles that we are very clear about.
And principles are really important, but in order to make them concrete, we just want to take a few examples of experiences that we're all used to on a daily basis to see how they are kind of the antithesis of what we wanted to create, or what we were out to create when we created Bixby. So we all use messaging almost on a daily basis, to connect with our friends and family and colleagues. And in many ways, the threaded user experience, the back and forth that goes on with these people who you can't even see, is great for understanding or digesting or figuring things out. But when it comes to assistance, you don't really want to figure things out. You want it figured out for you. So we designed Bixby to embrace clarity and brevity and getting straight to the point, delivering exactly what you need. Another reason why it's different from messaging is because history has no role whatsoever to play when it goes inside a conversation. One often goes through their message history looking for old pictures or files that were shared, but you don't really go to an assistant to look for you don't really look back inside a conversation that you're already having with an assistant to go back and reflect, remember, and look back. So we really wanted to just accelerate doing the thing that you're doing and move you forward instead of looking back. Also, unlike search engines, assistance is not about sifting through pages and pages of results. It's really about easing the burden of choice, because as an assistant, you know the user's preferences, you know their habits, you know how they make decisions, and you can really simplify and ease the burden of choice for these people. Lastly, assistive conversations are unlike anything that you see on apps today. Apps really put the user in the driving seat. So all the UI that you see on screen is really just like a spreadsheet. Like they're manipulating different tabs and search bars and filters and menu bars to slice and dice the information that gets shown to them on the screen. But the view pane for that content is squeezed because of all the UI on the screen. So with assistance and with voice and all the context and continuity that you have inside of conversations, you can really invert this hierarchy and make it all about the content instead of it being about UI on the screen.
So based on all the principles that Gaurav outlined, our team reimagined a new approach to conversation and assistant. And it's like this. The user makes a request to find some restaurant nearby, and Bixby responds with the created set of options, like this. So let's break it down step by step. You can call Bixby by press and hold on the hardware key, or simply say, "Hi, Bixby." Bixby launched in the listening state where it's waiting for the user to make a request. And we thought it was really important to keep the context of whatever the user is doing. There is high likelihood it is related with what they want to do with Bixby. So we kept it lightweight design. As you can see the screen, we designed it a translucent layer on the top of what you are doing, and you can see what in the background. When the user starts speaking, they see their words streaming on a screen. In this case, they are trying to say, "Find some restaurant nearby." And it's confirmed that the Bixby is listening to you correctly. And then, when they release their key or stop speaking, Bixby starts processing for their request. As you can see at the top of the screen, the previous screen, then the Bixby logo animation is changed when processing state. And after processing, Bixby introduced what we called moment. And this screen is moment screen. A conversation with Bixby is a string of moments and tied together with the user request.
Now we've designed these moments to really use the entire screen as the canvas for a conversation and getting things done. A moment is composed of 3 parts. Bixby's dialogue is a key aspect and sets the stage or the context for the rest of the moment. A dialogue is a sentence or two that delivers the response or an answer or some commentary on what's being shown on the screen. And on a device with a screen that we're talking about specifically right here, it's displayed in what we call the conversation zone. Views render the content of a moment. In this case, they're showing a list of restaurants from Yelp. Bixby uses a templating system that allows you to define what content looks like on the screen. And you can think about it like a collection of building blocks that you can define with the same Bixby language that is used to define the models and concepts on the Bixby Developer Studio. We want your capsules on all Samsung devices, and the Bixby platform will support scaling these views across devices. So on a device with a screen, views are displayed in what we call the content zone. Also, depending on the type of moment, you can include follow-ups like action buttons or conversation drivers. For instance, in this case, they're being used to refine the results which are on the screen. On a device with a screen, these are displayed in what we call the action zone. So what you see is an example of how this works today on a mobile device. But there's lots more devices in store which are coming up. So this model has been systematically thought through by our teams to extend throughout our device ecosystem. So the conversations with your capsules will seamlessly transition everywhere. John, why don't we move forward and show some more moments in this conversation?
Okay, sure. Bixby is all about moving you forward. So whether it's through voice, touch, or even typing, whatever is easiest for the user in any moment. In this case, user sees Leo in the list and she or he likes it, so they simply tap it. Now, as a user, you can browse through the detail or make a request to reserve a table for 7 p.m. And at this point, Bixby set up your reservation for you and confirm all the details with you. In this case, we are illustrating a feature of the platform called selection learning. As a user, if you always make a reservation 3 people, then Bixby can learn that and fast forward you. You can look under the hood at any moment to reveal Bixby understanding to see how it understands and execute your request. So you can see the screen. You can see what you said, all the choices Bixby made for you, and you can also have the option to switch to another service provider. So you can swipe back up and go back to the confirmation moment. And finally, when you tap make a reservation, click tap, and it's done. Now, based on this reservation, Bixby gives you the right information at the right time, available to you at the simple press of the Bixby key. So, conversation with Bixby is all about getting things done, learning along the way, and supplying important information when you need it or when you ask for it. In the second part of this presentation, Gaurav will give you a detail behind the scene walkthrough of how we think about designing this conversation.
So like John mentioned earlier, conversations with Bixby are really a choreographed back and forth between the requests that the user makes and the moments that are introduced by your capsule. So let's go back to the example that we described for Yelp. Now, in this case, the user started a conversation with Bixby by making a request to find restaurants nearby. Now, since the user's intention is to explore certain restaurants nearby, they will expect some results to choose from. So you can present these choices in what we call a result moment. In this moment, you choose from a few different ways to present these options as a list. Yelp is using a feature of our platform called Highlights, and they're really featuring some assistive suggestions like based on your preferences or highly rated and inexpensive restaurants. Now, you can really leverage highlights to be more assistive with your capsules. For instance, it's very predictable that if you're designing a flights capsule and the user is probably always looking for cheap flights, fast flights, the flights with the least pain. So these are perfect highlights that you can include in a flights capsule. Now, one thing to note is that the way dynamic program generation works is that every time you make a request, Bixby is trying its hardest to get you to a result. And this is important to keep in mind as you're designing your capsules. Another example of this in action is when the user taps on Liho, that becomes another request to Bixby to fetch the details for that restaurant. And then your capsule can return these details as another result moment. Now, the key difference between these two result moments is that one was using a list view to display multiple results, and the other is using what we call a details view to display a single result, which is more appropriate for what this result moment is all about. Now, when the user makes the next voice request, the goal has changed, and the user is requesting to reserve a table. This makes for a more complex request because the platform is dynamically gathering a plan, making sure it has all the information it needs, and making that happen for you to get you to a result, which is a booking at that restaurant. But let's say that it did not have any selections to choose from or learn from. So it will ask the user for a number of people that it needs for your reservation. This is an example of what we call an input moment. And this is usually a great opportunity to learn more about the user so that we can fast forward them over time. Once the capsule has all the information it needs, it's good to confirm all the information with what we call a confirmation moment. Now, this is one of those moments which is not recommended to use always, but to exercise caution, it's good to confirm. But for some requests like playing music or setting up a reminder, it might be silly to have a confirmation moment. So it's all about getting things done faster, but there are certain things like monetary transactions or transactions which have an impact on other people or businesses or that cannot be reversed easily without leaving an impact or a trace behind. Those are the kinds of things that you want to confirm with a user. And finally, once the user confirms, they see a receipt in the form of a result moment.
So this diagram that Skywalk used to describe the model that defines the conversation with Bixby, and it will solve a framework for you to think about the user experience of your Bixby capture. The conversation model defines the order in which the moments occur. And this model reflects the way dynamic program generation works on the Bixby platform. It also illustrates how each interaction that Bixby orchestrates between user and your captures inform the larger narrative that makes going things easier and faster. And Bixby loves conversation, of course. But at the same time, if the people specify all the detail they want in the request, for instance, text Gaurav that I will be there in 5 minutes, something like that, we don't need to make a such conversation. And we can get them further along. And this is something that you as people who defined design and developed this capture can really leverage the platform for in order to make the user experience of your capture smooth and delightful. And lastly, just a reminder, users are only ever in one moment at any time. Conversation with Bixby are not threaded, and it is all about looking forward.
So let's take it one step more further and break it down to look at how you actually compose these. Once you have a flow, how do you actually compose these moments? So When we looked at the different kinds of moments, we summarized there were three, basically, result moment, input moment, and confirmation moment. All of them have a very distinct purpose and role to play inside of a conversation with Bixby. Results are all about getting you to an answer with a list of options or a single result or a receipt, which is done at the end of a transaction. An input moment is about gathering information from the user and learning along the way. And a confirmation moment is confirming before there are certain kinds of transactions which you want to confirm. So all of these have a common framework, like we described in the beginning of the presentation. They have a dialogue portion at the very top, which sets the context for the conversation. They have views, which render the content of your capsules. And then they have follow-ups, which basically are next actions the user might want to take on that moment. Now, let's break it down and talk about how you as developers can think about all these different layers inside a moment and compose your moment. So a Bixby dialogue we'd like the style for Bixby dialogue to be clear and concise, friendly and conversational, so that it's really delivering what needs to be delivered in a straightforward way, but with informal language which has a friendly demeanor. And it's really about making sure that all of this is thoughtful and authentic. So for example, if a flight is always late and for once it's on time, at that point you could say it is thoughtful and authentic to say, wow, it's on time. But if you just always say, wow, it's on time, it loses its meaning. So it's really important to be thoughtful and authentic when you read this kind of dialogue. Bixby views. So this is the second part that is important to think about when you're composing moments. So Bixby views is essentially an aggregation of all your components, right? You can that can render your layout. Now, our design teams have really thought this through in terms of all the different. So it's really as simple as within a moment, you select the view that you want to use to render the content, and then you pick the right components. For example, in this case, we're using a list view combining with a card, a highlight card, which results in a certain kind of a moment. Another example of this could be just using a different kind of card, and that would lead to a different moment. So it's really as simple as just choosing your view inside a moment, and then the right component, which is all available to you inside of the Bixby Views platform feature, which you can easily write with the same programming language that is used to model and create concepts within the Bixby Developer Studio. So we've thought through all the different components, depending on the intention of each moment that you might need to create these conversations. So in list views, it's all about the different kinds of cards and content blocks that you need. And then in detail views, it's really about stacking different facets of information. It could be reviews, it could be maps, it could be simple typographic blocks that you can just stack on top of each other in order to create this moment. And then on a result moment with the receipt, it's all about summarizing payment information, if it was actually a monetary transaction, or a detailed breakdown even, or if it had multiple items that were being sent or delivered or purchased, then a summary of that. So all of those components are available within this moment and this type of view. And this has been thought through for all the different moments. So our design system it covers basically the breadth of these conversations and moments. Result moments, the input moments at the lower left, and the confirmation moments. Also, if you're more interested in finding about this, there's a design booth right outside this session that you can go to and get a walkthrough. The third portion, aside from Bixby Dialog and Bixby Views, was Bixby Follow-ups. So again, what really we are tying it all back to is the intention of each moment. So in a result moment, which has a list, the intention is to refine, the intention of a next action or a follow-up will be to refine the results so that you can get to the result you want. But inside of a detail moment, detail view, it'll be about the next action on that single result that you're seeing, like maybe reserving a table for that restaurant or calling that restaurant. So similarly, like on a receipt, it's still about next actions, and on an input moment, it's about accelerating you forward. So on a calendar picker, you could definitely have the option to select on a visual widget, but at the same time, if you're just looking at this weekend, you should simply be able to tap it or request it with voice. So Bixby is very multimodal in that sense, and especially on a mobile device, because you have a screen in front of you. And then a transaction moment is really focused when it comes to follow-ups, because the main key action, which is to make a reservation here, is the most prominent one. So all of these things that we discussed today about designing your capsule are actually very well explained in a lot more depth and referencing a lot more developer documentation on bixbydevelopers.com. So you can go ahead and check out in the guides section under design guides. You'll see how to create all these moments alongside guidelines to define and write dialogue as well. And before we part, I really want to paint the picture of the future that's to come here. With Samsung, you all have an extraordinary opportunity to be on multiple devices and the entire Samsung device ecosystem. And we've given incredible amount of thought to make this really easy for you. We imagine a future where your model and your user experience is defined once, and it just scales seamlessly across devices. So this is what keeps us up at night, actually, as a design team. And we really look forward to hearing from you as you use the Bixby Developer Studio to hear how your experience has been, and what you're bumping up against or what's working for you, so all of that. So please feel free to reach out to us and using our support channels. And like I said, for any other questions that you might have, we have a design booth right outside this session that you can join us at.
Indeed, thank you for joining us this afternoon. And it's been our privilege to share our thinking to you guys. And we look forward to seeing all awesome capture that you will create. And we'll be around the meet and greeting with you for the next few minutes. So if you have a question, then you can join us at the design booth or the CodeLab right outside of this room today and tomorrow. So this is it, our presentation today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.